All right, hi everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me today. We're going to talk about something that's very dear to my heart, and looks like it is for you too, and that is the love of beer. So let's get started with Untappd. So first of all, who am I? My name is Greg Avola. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Untappd. We're based out of New York and Los Angeles. We're actually doing this on a part-time basis. I'm a New York City resident, but I am a diehard Red Sox fan, so I apologize if anyone's offended by that. We sucked last year. You guys made the playoffs. Please give me some break. Come on. I specialize in PHP, JavaScript, and MySQL, which is the technology stack from some part of it for Untappd. And my claim to fame is I was on Man vs. Food for 9 seconds, had a great cameo. I'm going to show it to you right now because this is amazing stuff, okay? That's it. Thank you. It was an Oscar-winning performance. I still get text messages from friends like at 2 in the morning when this re-airs. It's pretty funny, but that's all. So first off, next slide here. So what is Untappd? Untappd is a social discovery tool for your iPhone, Android, and pretty much any device. It allows you to do a lot of cool things. Track your beers, see what your friends are having, rate, and most important, discover, which is what we're all about. One of the important parts of Untappd is being able to encourage your realm of beer to a different state. So you would normally drink one beer over and over again, but you're a little bit afraid of kind of branching out. What Untappd helps you do is make the drinking experience more social into a web presence. So there's a Twitter and Facebook for certain activities, but we focus on beer, which is a very social activity, but never really on a web presence. One of the key features of Untappd is the sharing ability. When you check in on Untappd, we use Foursquare for all of our locations. So basically, the user can check in a beer and attach the location that they're actually using, and then share that with friends. You can push that to Twitter, Facebook, and back to Foursquare as well, so you don't have to open up too many apps at once. Because we all know that the most important thing when drinking a beer is drinking the beer. So that's really what it's all about. Discovery is a big important part, like I mentioned before. One of the things that we introduced in our newest app that came out last year is the ability to discover new places and beers for you. This goes along the lines of you go into a bar and you're not exactly sure what to have there. The app can recommend beers based on what your friends are drinking, what has been checked into that location in the last 30 days. That's the average state of a beer from a keg perspective, and also based on the ecosystem of the app. So if a beer is very popular over the last 30 days, it'll push it to the top. As you can see in these screenshots here, these are from Oregon, where we were at a conference recently, and you can see some of the top venues that are going. This is really cool if you go to a new city for the first time and you want to see where the happening spots are around the block that serve beer that you like. It can sort and filter to your kind of methodology. We also have maps to show you where your friends are. Don't abuse this feature. It's a friendly feature. If they're completely wasted, it's not a very good thing to look for them, try to find them and play around with them. But the key part is that you can find your friends and make it more social, because what Untappd means to do is making drinking a much more social activity. A little about us from a community perspective, from stats. We have around 400,000 users that are registered in our service in about 2 years. And we have 21 million check-ins. So as you can see, not a huge user base, but a very dedicated user base that likes to drink a lot of different types of beer. It's really cool. We average around 3,000 check-ins per hour. We have around 20,000 social shares per day, such sharing to Facebook or Twitter or Foursquare. When someone shares to Twitter or Facebook, we track their follower accounts so we can see what the total reach is. So we reach around 7.3 million people per day. And we also have a feature in our app that allows you to take pictures of the beer that you're having. And on an average weekly total, over 35,000 photos uploaded of beer-related photos. I must stress that. So that's really cool. For a small startup like ourselves, only 2 people and self-funded, it's pretty cool. So this is really cool. Apps are awesome, and but what are you trying to solve here? What is the business proposition? What is Untappd really aiming to do? So we have a couple of things. I'll break them down into 3 different points where we think we can help a lot of people with the consumer side and also the business side. The first and foremost, this is a picture of Russian River out in California, and I label this WTF because if I'm a new user or I'm not really new about beer, I look at this list and I'm like, what am I supposed to have? I have no clue which beer I'm going to like based on my previous, style of taste. I don't know what my friends are drinking. I'm totally confused. I mean, all these beers are phenomenal, by the way, if you haven't had a chance to try them. But from a new user perspective, Untappd aims to help you make that decision when you're at the bar is, what should I have? What are my friends having? What will I like before I buy it? Because you don't want to have to return the beer afterwards because it never really works. On the business side, we want to give breweries the opportunity to expose their product. Now, this is a typical picture of a package store or a liquor store where you see these big mounds of the big beer, the big macro breweries out there. You see some micro breweries in the corner in the back, but at the same time, they don't have the placement, they don't have the money, they don't have the advertising to push their product to the front. And what Untappd hopes to do is, by people sharing and checking into their beer, they're marketing for them. So it's an opportunity for them to get a level playing field in the social front. Also, location is a really big thing when it comes to beer. Because beer isn't distributed everywhere in the United States and even in the world, trying to find a particular beer that you really like is very, very difficult. Your friends can tell you kind of where they are and what they're drinking, and that can give you a kind of a diary or a log of where beer is around the city. Every check-in is attached to a geolocated point, so by nature of doing some algorithms and some math, we can figure out really where the beer is, who had it, and how long ago it was had. So you can give a good idea of where the beer is. And that can help with recommendations too. By building out your recommendation engine, you can basically figure out what beers are available in your particular area, as opposed to more global recommendations where you can't get that beer. So some of the things that we offer breweries in the form of tools are brewery accounts, where the brewers can actually manage their page, their inventory, and see a little bit of what we call analytics on the stats of their beers. Now, this is kind of revolutionary, to use a term that's really overused a lot, but breweries sell to distributors in the US, and distributors sell to bars. So they don't really have an insight on who their users are, or what they're drinking, or where, or what time. All they know is the distributor says, I need another 2 cases of beer. I sold 2 cases last week. So we're giving them a real-time look into their statistics on a check-in, which represents a revenue booster for them so they can see it in real time. Also give them a list of what their top beers are, but also give them places and styles and what have you. Also, managing your online profile for a beer company is very tedious. There are a lot of sites out there that don't offer a lot of good tools to help you kind of manage your profile correctly. Add the correct IBU, the ABV, all these acronyms that they need to fix to make sure that everything's accurate. We give them really cool tools to help them do that. We also give them an important feature which I like the most. It's the ability to toast and comment on people's check-ins. Now, toast is our version of like for Facebook, or a +1. It basically allows the breweries to say, hey, good job, we'd like you checking into our beer. We can also comment and say, how'd you like it? Did you have it with some food? These are really important features for breweries because they can never really communicate with the customer or the user on a regular basis. When you're at a bar and I have a beer or a Bronx Pale Ale or something like that, Bronx Brewery can comment directly to me and say, how'd you like it? And that's a really good communication tool between the two. So here are some examples of some breweries that have done this both in the US and outside the US. On the right-hand side, we have a 6 Point, which is really active on our service to kind of communicate a lot. You get a lot of interaction with individuals. You can get some insights. We had one brewery that released a batch of their beer. They had a lot of negative comments on Untappd. They figured out that it was because the bar wasn't cleaning their tap line. So through that information, they can go back to the bar and say, hey, last 7 check-ins have given us a really bad rating. But they said it was really good in the previous times they had it. What's going on? So we can use these tools to kind of better serve the customers and whatnot. And the best thing about our service is, just like Foursquare, we have badges for achieving awesomeness when it comes to beer. So we offer these badges both as the core side for Untappd users to unlock, such as drinking 1,000 unique beers, which has been done multiple times, and or doing certain activity like having a beer at a music venue or at a bowling alley. So kind of gamification comes to the beer world in a kind of a fun way. But also for the breweries, it gives them an opportunity to promote their own products as well. So here are some examples of some badges we've done for breweries and for beer weeks. On the top left, that's Karl Strauss celebrating their anniversary. Users can check in Karl Strauss beer during their anniversary time period, and they would unlock this badge. We did one for Bridgeport, which is out of Oregon, and LA Beer Week, and other ones as well. So it's a great opportunity to kind of incentivize the brewery industry to kind of think outside the typical advertising realm. You put an ad on a page or in a newspaper, it's very static. With Untappd, it's more, action-based. You have to go out and check in or try in the beer. And what we're finding is people will drive state to state looking for a beer to unlock a badge. I had a friend of mine from California trade 4 beers and a Nintendo Game Boy mint condition for a beer to get a badge. And I don't think that's crazy, all right? But it happens. And these are kind of cool ways for people to kind of encourage to try different things. And once you've tried something, as we all know, we kind of become a fan of it, learn more about it. So it's a good way to do that. So with this, we have over 2,000 breweries that have already claimed their profile on Untappd. Here are some big ones to be named: New Belgium, Dogfish Head, Deschutes, all interacting with customers today on Untappd, and also interacting with other breweries as well to see how they're doing across the board. So it's a really cool thing for them to try out. But with every service, you got to have apps, because apps is the only cool thing, because if you don't have an app, you're not really a service. So I want to shift the discussion a little bit toward what our apps are like and how we got there with our small development team. So first thing, starting out, we built the product back in October of 2010, so about 2 years and a couple months. And we started out with a basic principle. We thought maybe it'd be cool to actually check in our beer, share with friends, and we wanted to make that on a mobile platform. To be honest, my co-founder came up with the idea of Untappd, and I told him, I don't think anyone's going to do this. It's probably a waste of time. I was completely wrong with that. So we started out with the only thing we knew. We're 2 web developers. We said HTML5, let's do it. Let's try it. Let's get a prototype out there, and let's really work on trying to get this in that direction. So we started with an HTML5 app. The cool thing was that worked on day one on a lot of different platforms, iOS, BlackBerry, WebOS, Android, everybody really on day one from the browser. And that was great because there were a lot of apps out there that did similar things, but they're only on one platform. There wasn't really any on Android at all. There were a lot on iOS, but nothing really on the Android front. So it was great to kind of explore the multiple platforms. When we first built it, there was something called jQuery Mobile. There was Seneca Touch, but they weren't really in the kind of stable environment. So we actually built our own custom framework to support these kind of different pages in this web app. And then we had social integration on day one. The ability to share to Twitter, Facebook, which is pretty standard nowadays, but back then, those helped us really kind of grow the ecosystem of the users and to get them excited about earning badges. Little piece of trivia: when we first did Untappd, every single badge unlocked with 1 check-in. So we had a top of the morning badge, which was drink before 12 p.m., 1 check-in. So we launched the service in the morning. People would try it out and get like 15 badges. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is great. So we had to scale that down a little bit as we learned a little bit through the system. So as Untappd grew, it was awesome. We were seeing all this organic growth of our user counts. It was amazing. That little dip right there, that's a Mashable post at 2 in the morning Eastern time. That was not good for servers. So that was interesting. So we're slowly growing, and everything is fantastic. But we have a problem, okay? The problem is that apps, everyone wants native apps. They want to be able to download things. They want to be able to have it on their phone, on their home screen. Even though you can do that really easily with a web app. The common knowledge is right there. Basic problem: people couldn't find us. They couldn't find us at all. I go to a bar to try to encourage people to use it, and the first question they'd ask you is, how do I get Untappd? We say, open up your browser. And they go, what? Open up your browser. I don't have a browser. I have a App Store. I have Google Play. No. Go to your Safari, your Chrome, your whatever, and you lost them. They couldn't find you. So we had this big problem about web apps and native apps and trying to bridge that gap. The second thing is native development is very, very hard. For us, for web developers, I don't really know the language that well. We have to learn something new, and that's something that we just didn't have the resources and the time to do. And finally, we're self-funded. Okay, money's awesome. It's the biggest superpower in the world. The problem is we didn't have any. We're just paying our rent. It's pretty hard to do anyways in New York City. So we thought to ourselves, what do we do here? We have these pros and cons for native and mobile. How are we going to bridge the gap and be able to provide a good experience by using native functionality such as the camera and other features, but still be able to develop apps and be able to support them? So, on the pro side, it was really cool to be able to push out new updates right off the bat with HTML5, but we lack features like discoverability and camera, which are now available in some versions of OSs, but back when we started, they weren't there. So our solution was Phonegap. And Phonegap allows us to do everything we just talked about and access native functionality and still make the app really move really fast. So there are a lot of solutions out there. This is the version of our app running on Android. Actually, a new version that's going to be coming out probably in the next week. And why do we choose Phonegap over the other ones? Well, it was quite simple. Phonegap allows us to develop an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then put all that in a wrapper, and then build plugins on top of that to support native features. There are other stuff that are similar to this out there, but they require us to use their own object types, their own data types. This was the simplest for us to do, and it produced the best results that we had. So we basically took our mobile web app and we converted it over to a Phonegap app probably in 2 hours. And it was fantastic. It was running on all of our phones. We were, really, really excited. The problem is that we need to make it customizable to the level of UI patterns for each individual phone. So as you can see in the Android version, we kind of keep a very similar style to what you guys have, more of an action bar on the top. On our iOS version, we flip it over to have more of a bottom bar navigation. So those are the things we learned throughout the entire process to really build your UI around what the app actually is. One of the cool things is the plugin feature of Phonegap. You can actually access native things like, for example, in iOS, you can access the action sheet, which is the piece that brings up the bottom bar. You can touch on those things as well and still not write an ounce of native code. So it was a really good opportunity for us. So, well, how did it work? Did it work well for us? Well, you can see these jumps here. And when the day we released our Phonegap app, version 2, huge spike. It was, ridiculous. It was pretty awesome. We were really excited about that. And then, as you can see later on, we did another version, a version update on the right-hand side, and it still went up again. So as you continue to build your product and build your design, we found out things we could do to tweak it and make it more interesting. And Phonegap for us really helped us bridge that platform. So some of the cool things is that on the first month that we did it, we ranged 25,000 users on the first month that we released our native app. We're averaging around 4,000 users a month previous to that, so it was a huge jump. We increased check-ins by 300%, which was crazy for us to see. And then my wife told me that we were on the top 50 apps in the App Store on iOS. I don't believe her. I think she's lying to me and making me feel better, but she says it was true, so I'm going to put it in the slide deck. But yeah, we really love Phonegap, the ability to kind of connect with these multiple interfaces. We've been really big on HTML5 and web apps. We think that's the future of apps out there. And I think that a lot of browsers out there help us get to that realm. And this was the best vehicle to get there from that avenue. So I want to shift to a little bit about little fun stats about Untappd. Because as we all know, if you're a data junkie, you love beer, a lot of interesting stuff can come out of data that we're generating that shows interesting trends on what we're doing, what the industry is doing, what the consumer base is doing. First, I want to go on the technology stack around Untappd and what we're actually all about. So first, we're a traditional Lambda stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. We use CodeIgniter for all of our app framework, so that powers our API, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And also, our mobile apps are all written in HTML5, but they're all powered by the API itself. We use Redis and Memcache, which has been lifesavers, specifically for counts. So every beer on Untappd, every time it gets checked in, the count gets increased by 1. So we store it into Redis for fast memory kind of database reads. Amazon S3 we do use for all of our static files. So JavaScript, mainly our assets, but more importantly, our photos. So every time a photo gets uploaded to Untappd from the actual app, we store 4 versions of that file. We store, a large, small, medium, thumbnail, and all that gets stored in S3. We use Rackspace Cloud for all of our hosting needs. We got an email yesterday from them saying that we are now we have like 2 dedicated account reps for us. And I don't know how that's possible, but we must be paying a lot of money to them somehow. And then we use Amazon Cloudsearch, which is a pretty new technology for us for all of our searching needs. Beer and brewery search can be very difficult because you go down to a local bar, they're going to call Brooklyn Ale, which does not exist as a beer. It's Brooklyn Lager, but people will have the wrong names. So we really need a fundamental way of adding aliases to beers so they can be searchable, so then no more duplicates are in the system. It's actually funny that we did that because we have a team of super users, around 40 volunteers, that go through the database and they merge duplicates. And we have a free opening editing system for beers, so you can add whatever you like. So people have taken, whatever they want to do and made beers out of it. So my favorite one is Water by the brewery Earth. That was a good one. We have Dr. Pepper in there, and interesting stuff all over the place. So we rely on a lot of our moderators to help us merge and consolidate that. A lot of beer sites kind of keep this closed-minded view of like, we'll approve the beers and you guys don't know anything, but it's really open and allows us to allow people to add a lot of stuff in there. So we're not as big as Google, so those numbers shouldn't shock you, but for me, they shocked me when I saw them. But every given month, we're transferring about 2.8 terabytes of data just to our database alone. That's all of our queries, all of our media, all of our assets, everything back and forth. So this is all like beer-related terabytes of data. It's pretty crazy. 2 million beer-related, as I stress, photos have been uploaded to Untappd in about a year. So we're averaging on the weekends around 16 to 17,000 photos uploaded. Now, when we first implemented this feature, I thought to myself, maybe I'll take a picture of a beer because it's kind of fun, and I won't do it very often. And now I'm taking it all the time, and I can't understand why. I think everyone wants to take pictures of what they're drinking to brag. It's just like food. People take pictures of food. It's like better than yours. But beer is in a glass, and it's usually the same color than your friends. How are they going to know what the picture is of? Hey, people do what they want to do. So that's the way it is. People usually don't actually share the beer they drink the most. So the top graph shows what people drink, what they share the most. So Lagunitas, Guinness, Winter Lager, Yingling, and Bell's Hop Slam, which is a really good double IPA. But then the one on the bottom is what they usually have. So we have Guinness and Lagunitas, which match. Then we have Bud Light, Winter Lager, and Miller Lite. So basically, you're not sharing what you're actually drinking because you're ashamed of it, most likely. So that's probably what it comes down to. But it's a cool little stat that I actually love to show people because, people share the stuff they want people to be jealous of, but not the fact that they're the top 10 drinker of Miller Lite and Untappd. So St. Patrick's Day is a great day for everything. It's just this dog represents everything that is about St. Patrick's Day. So last year, we wanted to really push Guinness out there, but we didn't have a really good search engine. We implemented this after this. So we found out, doing an algorithm, that Guinness was misspelled 2,500 times in our database on the day of St. Patrick's Day. There are iterations in there that I cannot understand why somebody would do this. There's no G, there's no U. What were you spelling? Just punching a keyboard or something? I'm not sure, but it's a fun stat I love to say. Since then, we've added almost every iteration as an alias, so now it comes up. So this year probably won't have the same problem, but there'll be a lot of people creating beers that they don't even know what existed because, St. Patrick's Day. So the average user on Untappd drinks about 19 beers per month. So you're averaging a little under a beer a day. That's pretty crazy. I didn't realize that when I was doing that. Nothing wrong with that. Keep checking in and keep drinking beer. But 19 beers a month, that's a lot. Not like this fridge over here. So it's pretty crazy. So when we first built our database of beer, we used an open source beer database with around 5,000 entries. And now today we're at 200,000 beers being entered in about 2 years. And actually more of those have been entered, around 250,000 total. We do a lot of merges and whatnot. And this is crazy because we're averaging around 100 beers being created per day. Now you have to understand there are some home brews that people enter in as well. So there's not commercialized beer, but we still support them. But 100 beers per day is pretty crazy that you can still get that kind of realm of new beers being discovered all the time, which is amazing because beer is fantastic. So one of the things that I'm really big on is open source and allowing data to being shared to everyone. So if you have an idea for a quick project, or if you want to see some cool things or develop something, or we had some guy build a calorie counter, which I don't want to see ever when it comes to beer. But I believe that data really belongs to the world. So we had an API since the day one that we came out back in 2010. So we have a full API that is fully RESTful and all JSON. So if you're interested in kind of hacking around one weekend, you should check it out. So with that, I recommend to try Untappd if you haven't done that. It's available obviously on the iPhone, Android. We just released a product for BlackBerry, but with Phonegap, like I said, we're able to basically put it on platforms whenever we like. So I advise you to start drinking socially because drinking socially is the best thing you can do. And if you're at home drinking alone with Untappd, you'll never be alone again. Very simple, right? So I guess at this point I'll open up for any questions, and thank you very much. There's beer over there. Oh.
What are your highest and lowest rated beers?
The highest rated beer on our service is actually the Goose Island Bourbon County Stout. It's as a 4.7 out of 5. We do a algorithm for ratings similar to IMDb, so it's like a weighted average. But the lowest rated beer is, I believe, commercially related. It's Miller Lite. They have a 1.2 rating on Untappd. People hate that stuff. I don't know why. It's such a yeah. That's the important thing too. Untappd is all about craft and whatnot, but we're also about everyone else. So the four high checked-in beers ever is Miller Lite, Bud Light, Coors Light, and Coors. So those are the top ever of all time. So you can see that people are still checking those in, but after a while they're seeing what their friends are drinking and they're changing their habits. But then the user comes in the very next day and the website is all clean again, so you have to start over. So people are still using the service both on the craft side and also on the macro side.
In relation to that, are you seeing any evidence of people's tastes getting more exciting as they use the app?
Yes, absolutely. One of my best friends from college, and also another friend of mine from a previous job, he was the 4th highest drinker of Bud Light on the service. I think he had over 400 or 500 check-ins to Bud Light. He's gonna kill me for this story. And one day I saw him check into a beer that I had that I told him about, and since then he's not had a single Bud Light ever, and that was about 3 or 4 months ago. And I'm not here because I made fun of him so much, or maybe because he actually found the path to history of there. So it's a really cool feature to see that shift in paradigm when it comes to styles of beer, because after you check in, the app recommends 3 similar styles of beer. So we're hoping that those kind of take people on a different path and try to discover new beer. Now, there's nothing wrong with Bud Light or Miller Lite or any of those phenomenal beers at all. But there are other avenues out there to explore, and we hope that we get that from there.
Big fan of beer, but is this ever going to move to something like wine?
Yeah, that's the question we get asked a lot, is that, where is the fill in the blank for Untappd? We've got some crazy ideas, so cigars for Untappd, bike riding. I don't know what that is all about, but we've got that. Wine is the next step that we want to eventually go down. We want to nail down the beer piece first and get that kind of set. We've learned a lot from that path. I think that it doesn't really belong with Untappd. It belongs in a separate kind of ecosystem, but altogether it'd be one unique flow, a different app. But it's definitely something that my wife wants to use. She doesn't even like beer that much. She's like, "Where is Uncorked, man? Where is it?" It's actually a wine magazine, so they already own the domain and everything. That sucks. But yeah, it's definitely something that we're interested in doing.
I know you're big fans of HTML5.
Yep.
Facebook moved away from doing HTML5 in a web-based native. Do you think you'll reach that point at some point and scale, or do you think you're going to be able to?
Yeah, I think the whole debate on HTML5, if you actually inspected some of their code, they were actually hitting m.facebook.com inside their app and pulling in all of the raw HTML and JavaScript and then re-rendering it in the browser. That's pretty slow. You're going to see a lot of performance hit there. And we did the same thing when we first launched, and we found out that wasn't the ideal solution. So now what we do is we do all of the templating and rendering on the client side as opposed to rendering on the server and then passing it back to you. I think there'll be a point eventually that we might want to go native, but HTML5 is working pretty well for us, considering what we have, and we're excited about the features. The main thing is, what's great about the Android browser when doing these things is that you're allowed to have the same level of JavaScript rendering that you do on your standard browser. But on the iOS side, because they limit the developer interaction on the web view, you really don't have that same level of rendering. So hopefully, if they get their act together, we'll be happy people. So hopefully it works.
So is the use of Phonegap allow you to keep your mobile website and your native apps all in the same template?
Yes. Basically what we do is, PhoneGap will preach that you can use one code base across multiple platforms. That works, so you can definitely do that. For us, we separated it out, and basically we build a feature, and then we apply it to one template library. We use Handlebar.js for all of our template engine, and then we'll fix it on one of those repos, and then we'll just replicate it across the board, and then we'll push those and build them together. So it's really quick development. It's not like I say I want to build a feature into iOS, and then say, oh, well, then 2 months later, I'm going to have to build a feature into Android. Like I can do it all at once at the same time, which helps us. We actually really, we only release updates to both platforms on the same day. So if there is an iOS release, then we'll release Android. So we never want, I always hated, people like, oh, Android gets everything first. iPhone, we don't do that stuff. We just say everything out on the same day, and Phonegap allows us to help to get to that level.
So what's the monetization strategy? Do breweries pay for the analytics and that kind of thing?
Right now, the analytics are free. We do some advertising with the badges, which is a form of advertisement. I think what we want to do eventually, if we want to be able to help breweries connect better with their customers. As I said earlier, they don't have a demographics on what their actual age breakdown, state breakdown, location breakdown of where their beer is being sold. A lot of craft and even big micro or macro breweries, they spend millions and millions of dollars on these focus groups, people telling them, okay, how is the beer tasting? Or we have a service that does it for you freely without them having to pay the focus groups. And we fire that service back to you in an analytics form. So I guess once we get the amount of data that I think is relevant for them to make a decision, I think this could be used for marketing decisions and a lot of other stuff as well. And it doesn't really stop at just breweries too. Venues and bars could also use this data as well to better serve their clients.
I wanted to ask a little bit about the search functionality,
Sure.
only because it's probably my biggest pain point in using it.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just curious, like why, and I'm not an engineer, so there might be an obvious answer here, but like why it doesn't return, a suggestion even when you misspell.
Mm.
Anything would be helpful in some cases.
Yeah, we're working on that for another release for our app. When we first moved off of a basic, regular search, our cloud search from Amazon doesn't provide "did you mean," which doesn't really help us when that comes together. So we've tried to avoid that by adding a lot of aliases for common misspelled words. So we have a job that runs on a monthly basis and basically checks to see, versus the queries versus what was returned to see if there's a match, so we can figure out what those aliases are and we add them in. So that when you spell like 6 point with a space in between or space without a space, it gets it right. But we definitely want to add that in there. It's a highly requested feature.
Yeah, some of the breweries, obviously their names are not
Yeah.
search friendly.
Right. And another thing people are talking about is barcode scanners for actually picking up the bottles, which is great. But I have this suspicion that most people are drinking in draft beers, and that you can't do. And not even with technology to see the beer, it's just not going to be able to tell you what it is. So searching is definitely something that we want to work on and get better. We're very early in the development, but you should have seen it when we first started. Man, it was horrible. So bad. You could type in cores and it would come up with nothing. So, anyways. Yeah.
What is your favorite badge?
Favorite badge is I got married this past year in September, and my co-founder put in a surprise badge for the wedding. And I was thrilled. I was actually flipping out when I saw it. Because I do all the development on my site. I don't know how the hell he went to the database and put it in without unlocking it to the entire community. So that was pretty cool. But when I saw it, I was really excited, and that's probably the best badge I've earned. But besides that, I have to say the Take It Easy badge for kicking in I think it's 12 beers, 24 hours. I'm not encouraging binge drinking whatsoever at all. Okay, but if you're at a festival or a sampler, these are the things that you get those badges, and it's pretty cool. Someone told us we should do a cab badge, so when that unlocks, it automatically calls like the yellow cab and gets you a cab there. That would be funny. So.
So you were saying you did this part-time.
Yes.
Do you hope that this will eventually become a full-time gig, or are you happy with this as like a side project?
I hope to God it becomes a full-time thing, because I don't sleep anymore. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, I really hope that one day we'll be able to take this full-time and go down that route. I think that we have a solid business plan and a solid group of customers and users, and one day maybe that will turn into a full-time gig. So we're just chugging along now, hopefully get the position we want to go.
Do you have a list of the beers over there so we can check in?
Yes, they're actually on the top. They're actually, just like searching, they're horrible. You can't really read them. So we do have a list. I think we can provide it. I believe it's the Lagunitas Pilsner. It's the Peak Organic Winter Session. There is a chocolate beer, I believe, over there. Racer 5, which I highly recommend if you haven't had that one, which is an IPA. And there's Double White from Southampton, which is a wheat beer. So they're all in Untappd, and if you spell it right, you'll be golden. You guys need to offer an API, auto-suggest. That's what you guys need to do, and I'll be fine.
So there used to be a 15-minute,
Yes.
don't ask me how I know.
You're an early adopter, that's why you know.
Was that there for liability issues?
Yeah, we thought, at first we didn't really know what this would play out. The first time we released it with a 30-minute interval between check-ins. And we're like, yeah, no one's going to do that. It'd be fine. And it was like, what is wrong with you? 30 minutes? I down a beer in 5 minutes. Like, what's wrong with you? So we had to change it to 15. It went 15 to 10, and then we said, screw it. We just remove it altogether. It was more of a legal thing. We didn't know if someone would, check in too much, and then it would be, would be liable, but we kind of crossed that bridge, and we're all set with that. So, but yeah, it really was to try to slow down our abuse. Like, we do have, just like Foursquare, we do have people that go out and, they'll check in 1 million beers to get badges, jumpers, as they call them in Foursquare. And we have the same ones on our service as well. So we didn't want anyone to abuse the service and just check in over and over again. So we had that restriction. Now we've kind of made it a little bit better. So.
You hear Google, is there anything you wish that Google would do with the Android or anything to make your life easier?
It's funny that you asked that. I'm going to be completely frank. It's what I do. Android, there are so many different variants of Android operating system and so many different browsers that it makes it hard to pretty much debug. I'll give you a classic example. The HTC Resound, it's the phone with Dr. Dre headsets. Verizon pushed an update for Ice Cream Sandwich. And in the standard browser, it will not open the keyboard if you tap any text area. And I went out and bought my own one and tested it out. And the version that Verizon is pushing is different than the one you guys have. And it works fine in the one I have, but not the one they do. And so like those kind of things are so weird. And then the customer, the user will be like, well, it works in Chrome, fine. But I have 4 browsers on my phone right now. I have the regular browser, I have Chrome, I have something else. So there's a lot of differences between the two. So making that standard browser, either making it Chrome or getting rid of it or improving it to make it the same level of Chrome would be very helpful. But I mean, in all honesty though, Android it's easy to develop for because I don't jump through all these hoops to push my app out there. When I'm done with it, it's there and it's on the store, as opposed to waiting weeks and weeks and weeks to get things to go into the store. So. I love Google though, nothing wrong with it. So. I find myself fixing bugs with Phonegap because of these situations, so I'm able to pass information back to them. Phonegap is now owned by Adobe, so they're actually they have a lot more resources now to help us solve these problems. But we're mainly telling them that our users have these problems, and they're like trying to fix them on their end, and then we're helping together to help fix those. But for the most part, we're dealing with a web view, so the web view controls the interaction between our elements. So if you can't do it in a standard website, then it will not work in Phonegap. In the example I gave, if you open up the browser and you go to Facebook and you type in something in the text area, your keyboard won't come up. But if you use Chrome, it will be fine. So it's different between the two browsers. So we just report that stuff to them, and we help work with them to fix the native side of the code. One of the other things we encounter a lot is typically in Android, when there's not a lot of memory, you kind of close the processes that's running. So when we shift over to the camera, if not a lot of memory, it will kill our app, and then it will come back, and it will basically be gone. So we work with them to kind of fix some of the problems with that as well. But yeah.
So I'm using Untappd for the first time right now. And,
You're gonna give me a bug report or something?
I'm just curious to know when you connect with Facebook, why you guys ask for permission to read items in our newsfeed.
Read in your newsfeed?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a good question. We should probably get rid of that. But mainly what we should be looking for is you need your email address, your birthday, because we validate everyone over the age of 21 in the country, and we post to your actual.
No, it's asking for like both permission, but to post the newsfeed and to read.
Yeah, we don't read it. I can guarantee that, but I can remove that. I'll do it tonight. Sorry about that. Yes. I can't comment on that. No, I know we haven't had anything like that. Hopefully none of that in the future. I think what we try to encourage with all of our use is drinking responsibly. It's actually printed on the app when you load it up for the first time on the splash screen. And we're all about drinking socially and very responsibly. So we try to promote that as much as we can. So you won't see any badges like double take it easy any in the future or something like that. So that's not really what we're all about. So yeah.
Do you notice rating drift like up throughout a session? Like there's a bar uptown where I used to like rate your beers and everything, and I always noticed that my numbers would drift up throughout the night.
I actually pulled the stat on that yesterday, and I thought that would be the case. I thought earlier you'd probably rate higher, and lower you don't know what you're doing anymore. So like you just hit the buttons and it works. But actually it's consistent across the board. There's no deviation. One thing I do recognize is that on Untappd, Monday is the worst day for Untappd of all, which is pretty obvious because it's after a long weekend. If it's a holiday, Monday is popping. It's awesome. It's thrilling. But on Monday, you usually see people either checking in beers they've had previously over the weekend or checking in a beer saying, man, I'm so hungover. This is ridiculous. So hair of the dog. Hopefully it worked. So yeah, that's usually how it works. We typically have only, like other websites, we don't have a period on weekends and nights where we can take it down for maintenance. So we're at work all during the day at other jobs. So the only time we can take it down, we did some stats on this, is Tuesday morning at 4. And the only people that actually get pissed off is people in Australia. And they're just like, I'm sorry, you're like a day ahead of us. Like, give us a break. Come on. So, that's the only time we can really take it down without affecting entire people. Cool. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the questions. And have some beer.